Ladies and gentlemen, what you're seeing here is my best guess at why the intelligence explosion will happen, and a bunch of arguments for and against. And I obviously think that it's more likely that it will happen or something like it. And I have listed a bunch of arguments, and let's delve in. So basically, I have 11 arguments here for the intelligence explosion and for against. Let's go through the pro arguments. Let's start with the weakest to see where we end up. So the fact that models keep surprising. Every time a model comes out, it surprises. People discover things that they didn't believe were possible. Emergent new qualities come out of these new models. Maybe this is going to continue for the newest models, and that could give us enough of a jump to get us started on an intelligence explosion. The Q star, or System 2 thinking, is the idea that models today, ChatGPT, and they're good enough to do what's required to start an intelligence explosion. They are just not well organized. So System 1 thinking is you just blurt out your stream of consciousness. System 2 thinking is you think before you say something. And it could be thought of as a chain of thought reasoning before you start talking. It could be a tree of thought, or it could be any combination of different ways of thinking about a problem and then solving the problem. The next one is all the benchmarks go superhuman within 1 or 2 generations. I refer to the fact that any type of benchmark that humans believed were impossible for LLMs to beat have consequently beat them all, and in a very fast pace. Within a year, those tasks that were 5% completed by these chatbots, a year later, they all aced them out, and they all rule us on those, from ever after. They're not going back once they have made these leaps and have aced all the tasks. It's anyone's guess what's coming. Anyways, growing context is a big one. It means that these LLMs are not just getting smarter, but they can deal with more data. Today you can talk to these LLMs for something like 50,000 words, which for most use cases is way enough. But if you want to have it think about a very complex problem and like reason behind it, then you need bigger context. And today the best we have is something around 1 million words for Gemini, and in the future, orders of magnitude larger context could result in way better reasoning, and again, a leap change compared to what came before, potentially leaping us into intelligence explosion territory. We have scaling laws here. Scaling laws refer to this observed paradigm that as soon as you smash an LLM with more data and more compute, it just gets better. And it's not a law that we have an idea why it works, but it has been observed. It's an empirical fact about training AI models, and that alone, if it holds, if the scaling laws hold, then we should get ever more intelligent LLMs, not just bigger and more expensive. Increase in compute. The computers are getting faster and cheaper, and that doesn't seem to stop and wait long enough. There should be a limit where alone better hardware will cater for better intelligence, better capabilities. Next up, we got productivity increase in AI research. It's one of my favorites because the way to think about the intelligence explosion is you could have a lot of these AI agents, a lot of these AI researchers that are virtual, who work crunching out the next version of the models. But you can also think about how the AI tools that do exist today and are getting better are increasing the productivity of existing AI researchers. So if the productivity of an AI researcher gets 2x, then maybe also it's gonna lead to that maybe that's gonna lead to some type of I lost it. So if productivity increases twofold, then maybe it's going to translate to an increase in capabilities. Again, maybe just enough to get us into that territory where research is going faster and increasingly so because the productivity of individual AI researchers is like getting way higher than before. Compute overhangs. This is a complicated one, but let me get you just the gist of it. So the test time compute overhang is the idea that it has been empirically observed that when you train a large language model, you have a lot of compute that you spend on the training. But once it's born, you use a bunch more compute to run it. And depending on how you trade off the compute between the training and the running, there is some kind of optimum. And we are not at the optimum today. And if we could find the optimum, if we could like bring in more inference, more like running of those models and less of the training, that should theoretically get us maybe potentially a 1000x increase in effective compute, meaning maybe something like another 20 or 30 IQ points. And so that's a test time compute overhang. The other overhang is what I call just the normal compute overhang, where once you have created the model, you can run 1,000,000 of those. Or you can run one of those with 1,000,000 internal thoughts. Doesn't matter how you organize them. I mean, potentially it matters how you organize them, but the point is if you have 1,000,000 very able, but not quite as strong as a full-blown AI researcher, if you put them together to work in very effective teams and see which of the teams work best and you select them to carry on and do even better work, then maybe the fact alone that as soon as a new model comes out, it's multiplied by 1,000,000 could push us right into the explosion part of the intelligence. Now we're getting to the real core of it, which is reinforcement learning. That's what happens after the model has trained. So once the virgin model comes out of the training servers, a lot of reinforcement learning could be applied to learn from itself. There are different types of this idea. You could self-play or self-teach. The idea being that if you have a very able teacher who sees what are the points where the students could improve, then having a better teacher could lead to the students advancing faster. And that could be something like a flywheel effect or a positive feedback loop where self-teaching and self-playing, just as with AlphaZero against AlphaGo, we could crack the self-play on reasoning. Because crucially, generalization and reasoning ability is what we are after, and that's a very hard one to pin down, to put a number on. But it's maybe possible, especially with the aid of other AI, systems that overtake the reinforcement learning, the teaching, the making the virgin models just way more capable by combining their strengths and weaknesses in the best way. Crucially, this is what also some call synthetic data, because they produce their own data, so to say, and that's another argument that also weakens the data wall counter argument that we'll see later. Okay, number 2 on the list of pro arguments is the new machine learning paradigms. So these are the holy grails, and it's basically about brand new ideas of doing machine learning, other ways of generating intelligence. These happen every so many years, and nobody knows if one is coming. A lot of people have ideas about like what the next breakthrough could be, what could be the next thing that using the same compute would be like so much more intelligence because it's more brain-like, because it more efficiently uses the data and the compute it's been given. These are true holy grails, and if one of those are found, then we are pretty much guaranteed that we are way beyond where we can compare it to humans. And I would argue that if we have any one of those single breakthroughs, which we very well may not hear about because it's all done in-house and behind closed doors, it could be bang, super intelligence overnight. Number 1 in the pro arguments is recursive self-improvement. Basically, all I've said until now could be seen as recursive self-improvement, but crucially, this one is technically, I think, the way you define it is the model itself makes a better model, or if it's possible, the model makes itself better. It's not clear yet if you could do that in the paradigm of large language models, but one thing is for sure. There's got to be a way for them to understand themselves, understand their own code, understand how they could change that code for them to run faster, more efficiently. Exactly. So these were the pro arguments, and we have a sum of 45. I tried to give a score to each of these arguments, but the sum of all the con arguments are going to sum up to 15 only. And let's start again with the weakest. So this is the data wall. The intelligence explosion will not happen because there is not enough data, because there is more data still, but there is going to be a point in future, and we can tell that it's probably within 2 and 4 years that we will run out of all available data. There's going to be more data necessary to train the next model than we have, and this could mean the end of this ride, this ascension to intelligence through just more data. Hardware setbacks. It is indeed conceivable that because of a war, we could have less compute available all of a sudden, especially if the data centers are attacked. And crucially, it doesn't need to be some kind of kinetic war. They don't need to shoot it down with a rocket. I think it's probably more plausible for such a war, at least the one affecting global computing power, to be some sort of a cyber war. And if there's one entity who is strong enough to be able to control, switch off, or maybe overtake the computing resources of another entity, then maybe they'll be the opposite. That will lead to more hardware available to the winning team, at least. In very hypothetical, scaling laws won't hold. So the scaling laws are, for the pro side, with the same weight, because we just don't know if they will hold or if they will not hold. So these cancel each other out. Scaling laws, in my mind, will hold at least partially. I don't think they can go away entirely. I think the best argument that you could make is that they're gonna get diminishing returns instead of this exponential ride where where just more data and compute gives a better model that could taper out, and we just don't know if it will. The big one, though, is the fundamental limits to intelligence. For you, I can be honest and tell you that I do not believe that there is any type of limit to intelligence. I don't think it has any limit. In fact, and if it has a limit, some kind of fundamental limit, it is certainly not anything like human intelligence. Um, but yeah, if there's such a thing as a fundamental limit to intelligence, then we are toast. At least we're not going to be able to initiate an intelligence explosion. Although we could initiate an intelligence explosion, and depending where this hypothetical limit of intelligence is, we could maybe reach that level at least. But again, you know, to me, all these are very hypothetical, and all the contra arguments are, well, let's just say, somewhat. You need to you need to be a hater to really believe them hard, I think. So this was the first part of what I wanted to talk about. Is there going to be an intelligence explosion or not? Because crucially, if you accept the idea of an intelligence explosion, then you kind of have to accept the concept of a superintelligence, which you can measure by IQs maybe, or power, or just like this like hypothetical quantity of like ability, like capabilities. But to me, it is what I would call a god, and I like to talk about how it is the best ways to illustrate what they would become. So superintelligence, if you think this is the winner side and we have something like an intelligence explosion, then not too far after that, I predict that there will be God appearing on Earth. All right, so let's scroll down to the second part here. Just wanted to give an idea about the timelines, because if there is an intelligence explosion, then, well, when's it going to happen? It could happen tomorrow. I'm entirely convinced that it's the case. And I think I would not be entirely surprised if it had not happened by 2040. But I have a very low probability for that. In fact, today I like to think or say that to me, a 2-year timeline has something like a 50% probability, and go out 5 years, then I would give it something like an 80% probability. And these are the reasons why I think that. Okay, so these modifiers are the downward modifiers that bring the time of the intelligence explosion closer. So why could it be that the intelligence explosion is literally tomorrow? Well, because of the rate of increase in compute. It just keeps increasing. Moore's law is a thing, and in fact, for GPUs, Moore's law is way faster, and that has to do with catch up in like making more GPUs and less of the CPUs, but also in way more investment. So compute is getting more and more abundant by the day. If my memory serves, it improves at a rate of something, it something like doubles every year or thereabouts. We got geopolitical incentives. We need to win the war. We need to not let the North Koreans and the Chinese get the genie out of the box. We need to be the first to the grail. So we have a situation of a game theoretical landscape where you need to be fastest. In fact, I don't think there's such a thing as like a second medal in the race for super intelligence. And I think some of the relevant people at the relevant agencies know about that. So I really think that this is the main driver, that you need to be the first, because if you don't, then you're toast. Brain drain. You need to have a bunch of smart people, because a lot of the improvements that will be needed to get to superintelligence will need a lot of breakthroughs, a lot of software ideas, and you need the brains for that. And the brain drain has been rampant in AI. The salaries that you can demand if you know what you're doing are crazy. So that's how a bunch of people from physics or like maths come over and do AI because it pays better. Um, Economic incentives. Google and OpenAI and Anthropic need to get this revenue stream, and they get it by making the best models, and they make the best models by pushing as fast as possible towards more and more capabilities, more and more intelligence, and at the end it's about a return on investment. The investors need to see that it generates the dollars, and the dollars it generates, and I give it a 4, but I think this is on par with the geopolitical incentives. Those two run in parallel, and they all point to the same direction, which is full thrust. Algorithmic progress. These bunch of smart people make the algorithms that develop these digital minds ever more efficient. And by being smarter, using the same compute, they can make better models. So not only the computers are getting better, now you need less of them because your algorithms are faster. The smarts behind training this model is just getting better. So we could have an intelligence explosion very soon, because maybe somewhere someone is putting some serious algorithmic efficiency gain onto his model, and thereby developing it in a way that it's just way smarter than all the other ones that are around, and that could kick off our famous intelligence explosion. The new machine learning paradigms, ladies and gentlemen, these are, as we have seen them over here, the holy grails that some of the big tech companies and AI labs are looking for. They know that they have a steady path in front of us if they just scale up. That's their strategy, that's their plan A. But their plan B is looking for those very far out ideas, looking for crazy new paradigms that do not work at all the same way as large language models, but at the end are somehow smarter and more efficient and generate more money. So applied to a bunch of smarts, these could be what gets us to the finish line. But behold, there's a bunch of other arguments here that could slow us down. Diminishing returns. That is, well, we have the scaling law, and we throw more compute and data on our models, but all of a sudden, they are not getting as much better as we had expected. Well, nobody knows. Maybe the scaling law will not hold. Talked about it earlier. The regulatory restrictions. The state can come and tell you to shut down, or can infiltrate your company to the max, to the level where it actually slows down our AI research significantly. AI winters have occurred before, will occur maybe in the future again. If money dries up, there's all of a sudden less money and less brain that is solving these problems. And you know how the economy just swings up and down. An AI winter is entirely conceivable. Ethical concerns, yeah, maybe people will like, by their culture, spend like an extra hour thinking about safety and controlling these models so that they don't escape before hitting enter on like running them. Yeah, for sure, these are slowing it down. But again, in the Darwinian landscape of making these models faster and more profitable, the one that survives is the one that has the least ethical concerns. So yeah, that's why you got a score of 1. All right, so this was it. Let me know what you thought.